landscape of education and employment shifts with the demands of a globalized world, the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA, remains committed to developing the Filipino workforce by equipping individuals with practical skills and vocational trainings. TESDA is dedicated to building a stronger, more skilled nation. To give us an update on TESDA's strategies for bridging the gap between workforce skills and industry needs, we have with us tonight, in person, the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, Sec Kiko Benitez. Magandang gabi and welcome to our program.
Magandang gabi po.
Iunahin natin itong naganap na isang competition ba ito? It's a World Skills Competition in Lyon, in France, 2004. Can you tell us how it went?
Alam nyo, taon-taon actually, bahagi po ng mandato ng TESDA magkaroon ng National Skills Competition at sumali kung kaya sa mga International Skills Competition. Ito ay isang World Skills Olympiad na nangyari sa France where we sent 6 different teams in a variety of actually 6 individuals rather in a variety of different skills categories, no? And nakakamit ho sila ng 3 tinatawag na Medallion of Excellence. And the skills are from graphic design, no? Meron ho tayong cooking, no? Culinary arts, meron ho tayong electricians, meron ho tayong air conditioning maintenance and installation and so on. So taon-taon ho ginagawa yan, and sa totoo lang, next year po, the Philippines will host the World Skills ASEAN Competition. I believe either in August or October in 2025.
Paano nakakatulong ang ganito mga kompetisyon sa ating mga manggagawa? Paano rin napapataas ang kanilang kasanayan?
Siyempre, pag nagko-competition ho tayo, kailangan ng ensayo, mapipili natin sa loob ng Pilipinas kung sino man ang ating makikitang pinakamagaling, no, sa iba't ibang larangan ng skills competition. Pero siguro higit sa lahat, nakikita rin nila yung mga ibang bansa at kung anong klaseng mga techniques ang ginagawa nila, lalo hong gumagaling yung nanggagaling sa atin. At syempre, kasi kasama ho nila ang kanilang mga coaches, ang kanilang mga expert teachers, ay nababalik po sa atin dito ang mga bago o naiibang mga techniques, no? At nakikita nila kung gaano kagaling man ang iba. At nababalik nila sa Pilipinas para rin ang ating mga training at ang ating mga trainers ay gumagaling din.
Yes. Ano po ang prioridad ng TESDA? How do you plan to strengthen its role in enhancing technical and vocational education?
In fact, the President has asked to make sure that TESDA programs are judged primarily by how well it provides employability at the end.
Yes.
No? So, ang amin po ngayon na ginagawa sa TESDA ay naghahanap ng iba't ibang paraan para makasigurado na yung atin pong mga graduates, no, or certificate holders ng TESDA ay siguradong may employment sa dulo or pagkatapos at umangat pa ang ating employability rate sa TESDA. As of now, we average anywhere between 78 to 80% of our graduates landing decent jobs. No? So, ang ibig ho sabihin diyan ay manggagaling sila siguro sa unemployed. Pwede silang maging entrepreneurs, pwede silang maging employed, depende sa sektor. Pero meron din ho tinatawag natin na upskilling. So, meron na ho kayong trabaho, pero kailangan nyo ng panibagong mga skills, no? Para umakyat ang antas ho ng inyong trabaho at ng inyong sahod. So, along those two lines, ensuring that employability increases, underemployment decreases, no? And in fact, reskilling and upskilling for the various changes in the world of work na nangyayari sa ngayon. Ang isa kong hiningi ng Pangulo no, sa TESDA. So we are trying to ensure that employability is a goal which will require us to increase our partnerships no, with industry. There are 3 types of modalities by which TESDA provides its service. The first is maybe the one that's most familiar, which is institution-based. So meron ho tayong mga TVIs na nagtuturo po ng iba't ibang klaseng skills no? Na sinicertify po ng TESDA. Meron din ho tayong mga tinatawag na community-based. Ito po yung mga TESDA sa barangay no? Para po umabot sa lahat ng Pilipino kung saan man sila sa Pilipinas. No? Ang mga programa ng TESDA at matugunan po yung pangangailangan nila for better opportunities for employment and livelihood. Meron din ho tayong tinatawag na enterprise-based training. Ito naman po ang mga apprenticeship programs na kung saan meron hong kung minsan classroom teaching pero meron hong mas malaki at mas malalim na industry immersion. No, kung saan ang industriya mismo ang nagiging venue ng training.
So hands-on ang training.
Hands-on ho. And in that modality, we try to ensure that what industry needs becomes what TESDA offers no, as a menu of programs to the common Filipino,
Yes,
to every Filipino.
Sayang naman kung nagte-train, tapos yung tinetrain nila, wala namang end goal, no, na gumanda yung buhay nila dahil sila ay nakapagtrabaho o nakapagtayo ng negosyo o naging bahagi ng isang malaking kumpanya o ng industriya, ano po, sayang din yun.
Well, kasi naman sa totoo lang, TESDA is about continuing education and lifelong learning. So, hindi lang naman ho talaga trabaho siguro ang motibasyon, no? Kung sino mang gustong magdagdag kaalaman.
Yes.
So, we want to make sure that human potential is given avenues to deepen and increase. But for sure, ang primary mandato ho namin is siguraduhin na meron pong employment opportunities sa dulo, whether or not the individual wants to take it. And in fact, marami ho kaming mga TESDA programs at TESDA students na ang employment ho nila sa totoo lang hindi naman sa Pilipinas.
Yes.
Diba? They go overseas with the skills that they get from TESDA.
So at least we can say that there's personal growth ano kapag sila ay nakapagdagdag ng
Yes, sir.
kaalaman
Yes, ma'am.
sa training. Ayun.
Yes, ma'am.
Ano bang nakikita ninyong mga hamon ano na kinakaharap ng TESDA?
Isa na siguro dyan ang aligning, no? Because we have scholarships after all that's funded by the national government. And so we want to make sure that what we offer as scholarships are aligned to the local needs of industry as well as aligned to whatever the demands of our population might be in any specific locality. Kasi ang amin pong ginagawa sa TESDA is as much as possible to be area-based and demand-driven in terms of our offerings of our programs, but also specifically in the ways we allocate scholarship funds of government para mas malaki, mas malawak ang impact naman ng pondo naman ng gobyerno. So we have to make sure that it's aligned. It's aligned to our partners in DTI, for example, who can let us know what kind of industry requirements are being planned or required by the Philippines. But also with DOLE, who is after all our mother agency. TESDA is an attached agency to DOLE.
Yes.
To make sure that the key employment generator sectors that DOLE identifies have training components made available to our people. So aligning, ma'am, with the various government agencies
Yes.
para sigurado po yung pondo po ng TESDA ay ma-prioritize naman kung saan po talaga kinakailangan.
Yes, dapat parang in sync kayo.
In sync ho.
You're synchronized in
Yes,
what you're doing. Okay. You mentioned a little bit about the president earlier. Can you tell us a little more about his mandate to TESDA?
So his mandate to TESDA is to really ensure that we maintain and increase the 80% employment rate, right? And so he has asked us to increase enterprise-based training, but also to ensure that we can track employability even of our senior high school graduates. So kung meron ho kaming mandato na makipag-ugnayan sa DTI, sa DOLE, sa Department po of Migrant Workers, meron din ho kaming mandato as an education agency na makipag-ugnayan po sa DepEd at sa CHED. Sa ngayon, ang ginagawa ho namin, meron po kaming task force with Secretary Angara, who after all, like me, came from the Education Commission, him in the Senate, me in Congress, to ensure that TVL graduates of senior high school can get properly assessed and certified para ho matulungan silang makahanap ng trabaho. No? At hindi lang yon, kung kailangan, siguraduhin ho that they can avail of enterprise-based training and apprenticeships. No? Para kung kulang po ang natutunan nila sa senior high school, may pathway ho kung paano sila madagdagan habang nagtatrabaho.
Kasi yun ang sayang, di ba? Nag-tech walk sila na strands sa senior high school and yet parang walang continuity.
No? Kailangan ho may sumasalo. No? Not just in terms of certification, but in terms of pathways even within employment.
Ano ang pinaka-in-demand na technical skills ngayon sa ating bansa at paano ito natutulungan ng TESDA?
I suppose, according to our data, the one that has the highest demand at the moment is still tourism and the service sector with regards to hotel, restaurant, hospitality management in general. Kasi ho, ang demand sa atin ay hindi lang dito sa Pilipinas, an expansion po ng ating hospitality services, no, and our tourism sector, but also our fellow Filipinos who go and work on cruise ships, right? Who go and work on hotels globally. No? Medyo malakas ho ang desirability ng Filipino working in these sectors globally. So TESDA has to help both the expansion of our local industry, of the tourism sector, but also of the international demand for Filipino workers.
Yes.
Along with tourism, there is a very high demand, ma'am, for healthcare workers.
Yes.
No, there is also a very high demand for digital skills training, particularly in the IT, BPO industry. So, doon pa lang, ma'am, nauubos na po ang TESDA just in answering those three. But obviously, we have a much wider mandate.
Yes, opo. Okay, and also, how is TESDA addressing the skills gap? There's a current skills gap to ensure that the graduates are actually equipped with the relevant competencies needed in today's market.
So, meron ho tayong skills jobs mismatch, which we track based on underemployment and unemployment. Right. So what we are doing now is trying to identify which sectors those are most prevalent in, and they tend to be the same sectors as I've already described with the highest demand. So to cater, ma'am, the certificates and the training programs that we have to those prioritized areas or prioritized sectors, but we also have to be not just reactive but proactive.
Yes.
So there is an expectation of an increase in skills mismatch as the world of work changes and as technology's demands shift.
We continue to adapt and
so we have to continue to adapt. So we are reviewing our current training regulations and our NCs while trying to create higher level NC. So we have NC1, NC2, which you might be
I
most
will ask
familiar
you
with.
about that later on.
And then we are trying to create more NC3s and NC4s.
Okay, pag-uusapan po natin kung ano yung mga NC1, 2, 3, and 4 at ilang pang mga bagay ay ating pong babalikan sa pagpapatuloy ng ating programang In Person.
Ako po si Dr. Israel Francis Atienza Pargas, nagsisilbing Senior Vice President and spokesperson ng Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth. Nagkaroon kami ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng isang programa sa PTV4. This is, I think, bago nagkaroon ng pandemya at kasama ko noon bilang host si Mr. Aljo Bendijo. Ito yung parang naging pamamaraan ng PhilHealth na maipaalam sa ating mga kababayan at sa ating mga miyembro yung ating mga programa, kung ano ang mga panibago na mga polisiya na inilalabas ng PhilHealth, mga panibagong benepisyo, pamamaraan ng pagpapamiyembro, pagbabayad. Malaki ang kontribusyon ng ating PTV4 pagdating again sa pagpapalaganap ng mga impormasyon. And dahil nga sa palagian na pag-iimbita sa amin, pag-i-interview, ay mas naipalathala at mas naipaalam ng aming ahensya yung aming mga programa at benepisyo. Lalong-lalo na ito ay nagsilbi bilang boses ng ating pamahalaan. So I think that's one of the legacies of PTV4, providing the necessary information at yung tamang impormasyon tungkol sa mga programa at serbisyo ng ating gobyerno. Ako po si Dr. Israel Francis Atienza Pargas ng PhilHealth at ito ang aking kwentong PTV.
TESDA was established in 1994 and since that's 30 years ago,
Yes, ma'am.
since then, mga ilan na po kaya mga na-produce nating mga tech-voc graduates?
Ayon ho sa datos namin in the last 30 years, TESDA has graduated almost 36 million Filipinos, 36.7 million Filipinos. Pero ang amin pong assessed and certified ay nasa 16.5 million Filipinos po in the last 30 years. So we average anywhere between 1.5 to almost 2 million Filipinos get certified
Yes.
at the end.
Yeah, so ano bang pinagdadaanan? Importante itong salitang certified, di ba? Iba yung gumraduate ka, iba yung meron kang TESDA certification. Ano po bang
So,
pinagkaiba?
syempre, nag-uumpisa po tayo sa enrollment.
Okay.
Kung sino po ang papasok sa training. Tapos, yung mag-graduate po, yun ang nakakatapos ng training. Kasi hindi naman ho lahat are committed to finishing the course.
Yes.
No? After they get trained and they graduate, we also assess them. So may exam po sila sa dulo. And then those that pass the exam get certified.
Ayan. So they not all take the final exam.
Not all take the final exam and not all who take the exam pass.
So, kasi nga po, I think one of our senators said this, na bakit parang kalahati lang yata ng mga TESDA graduates ang nabibigyan ng national certification. So, baka kailangan ba magbayad para magkaroon ng certification?
Meron hong bayad.
Yes.
The assessment has a cost.
So it's not automatic that they need to say they want to study. Do they study again to get the certification, or yun na yun?
No, yun na yun.
That's it, no?
So the exam. So usually what happens is you take the course, and the assumption is that the course capacitates you to pass the assessment.
Yes.
But the assessment kasi is
If you paid attention and
if you paid
practiced,
attention and you were taught well,
yes,
right? An assessor from a different site comes and
Okay.
assesses you, right? And certifies na you do indeed have the skills that you were trained for. So marami hong possible reasons, no, and possible interventions to increase the rate, no, of passing. One is obviously to ensure that the training itself is higher quality. The second is ensuring that the teaching is more effective.
That the trainer himself
And the trainer himself is effective.
Yes.
So, meron ho tayong training also for trainers and training for assessors.
Yes.
Kasi ho, ang kailangan ng certification, pag certified na ho kayo, ano ho yan, meron ho tayong tinatawag na qualifications framework kung saan makikita po kung kayo ay anong level ng certification and qualifications ang meron. Nanggagaling ho yan sa 1 hanggang 4 at kung kasama ho natin ang CHED hanggang 5.
Okay, yun po ba mga nag-aral at na-certify? So, gumraduate sa TESDA, na-certify ng TESDA. Nakikita niyo po ba kung may preference sa mga dayuhang employers sa mga certified TESDA graduates?
Not really.
There's no data on that yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
So that's one of the data that we're trying to get. No? What we have, however, is the data on employability and utilization rate, which means we survey our graduates and ask them kung nagamit ba ang TESDA training ninyo and so on. Ito ba'y nakatulong sa inyo, sa inyong trabaho, sa kung saan kayo napunta and so on. And so far as our surveys are concerned, that's at around 93-94% of our graduates says yes, nakatulong sa akin, no, ang training. And as I said earlier, the surveys also suggest that 80% of our graduates do get decent employment after.
And there's confidence, di ba?
And there's confidence.
Once they do it.
Yeah.
Like, I know, in demand ang mga welders natin.
Meron ho tayong mga training rin na ginagawa overseas. Nagpapa-assess rin ho tayo ng OFWs.
Right.
So, as far as international employers are concerned, overseas po, recognized naman talaga ang TESDA certification.
Ayan.
It becomes proof, particularly if you're already employed, of increase in your competence and your capacities.
And speaking of OFWs, ano po mga kasanayan ang binibigay ng TESDA sa kanila?
So, iba-iba rin po. Depende rin po niyan sa industriya, no? So, you already mentioned welders. So, marami ho tayong mga construction overseas, no? Meron din ho tayong mga computer workers, people who work in the digital economy overseas as well. So, depende po yan sa pangangailangan ng ating mga kababayan overseas at sa demand po at gusto at hinahanap naman ng employers din nila. So TESDA, it tries to provide whatever training regulations we already have and create more should we not have them. No? That answers to the demand of employers overseas as needed by Filipino overseas workers.
Okay, so how does TESDA, let's say, and DMW work together? Kasi let's say merong OFW, trabaho niya ay residential worker, no? So sa tahanan siya. Sigurado ba tayong marunong siya magluto? Alam ba niya itong mga gadgets na ginagamit sa loob ng kusina? Baka akala niya television ay microwave pala yun. Di ba?
So obviously the Department of Migrant Workers have a series of criteria and qualifications.
Yes.
And sometimes TESDA provides those.
Ayun.
No, we provide certification again as needed. Pero depende po yan kasi sa sa job description requirements ng employer sa kabila.
And yung orientation, kasali rin po kayo sa orientation before they leave?
Salo ho yan sa DMW.
That's DMW, yung mga PIDOS, ano?
Pero meron din ho kaming programa for returnees with the OWA. So overseas workers that wish to come back or who do come back and need additional training. For example, they have finished their stint overseas and gusto nilang maging entrepreneur in whatever field. Meron din ho kaming agreements with OWA to ensure that we give training for those.
What are the common trainings that we give to returning OFWs?
Usually, ang marami ho sa dato namin nakikita is gustong magbukas ng karinderya or entrepreneurship skills talaga. So not necessarily sectoral specific, but bookkeeping, those kinds of skill sets needed to run an enterprise.
So it's really more like self-employed employed work. Ano?
Usually.
Yeah. Be your own boss na, diba? At sana may natipid din sila that they're able
That's
to
the
bring
assumption.
back.
May kapital na ho silang na save, no?
Okay, so bukod sa mga manual skills na tinuturo ng TESDA, ano po yung mga basic competencies naman o yung mga pagsasanay na not necessarily practical stuff, ano? Pero for instance, like naituturo ba sa isang manggagawa or sa isang paalis or isang taga rito na mahalaga ang teamwork, na that you belong to a organization, that you need to work as part of the team. May mga ganyan ba?
Yes, ma'am. Meron po. After all, attitude and 21st century skills are actually embedded in the training regulations as core competencies. So TESDA has also developed mechanisms, and pedagogies to ensure that there is at least some basic 21st century skills like collaboration, teamwork, problem solving, and so on. Communication, which is a very major
thinking, also.
Creative thinking. Meron ho kaming tinatawag na TESDA online program where in conjunction with USAID, TESDA developed online, what's called massive open online courses. So pwede meron hong e-TESDA, which includes a suite of 21st century skills as well.
And all someone has to do is navigate lang the
Just go on the TESDA website, ma'am.
It's all there.
It's all there.
So kahit nasaan ka naroon, pwede kang nasa abroad.
Po.
And you can do it from there.
Pwede po. And part of the mandate now is to review those, to update them, and to make sure that we expand them, as the definitions and the expectations of what constitutes 21st century skills also changes over time.
And language skills as well.
And language skills. Meron ho tayong National Language Institute dito sa NCR, sa main campus ng TESDA. And we do have training for language skills, foreign language skills. We also have training.
Anong popular ngayon? Korean?
Korean po. And Japanese.
Yes. Okay. Chinese, hindi po masyado.
Meron din ho kaming Chinese, but it's not quite as popular. Particularly since we are now in the middle of developing mainland Chinese Mandarin and the writing system.
Yes.
We have in-house Taiwanese Mandarin because the writing system, as I said, is different.
Is different. Okay. So as the country embraces the digital economy, ano kaya ang ginagawa ng TESDA para suportahan ang upskilling at reskilling ng Filipino workers? You touched on this earlier, pero let's expound on it a little more. Ang kasagutan ko dyan sa pagbabalik ng in-person.
Ang mga may init na balitang tumatak ngayong linggo sa mundo ng sports.
Sa unang bahagi ng Sentro Balita's Rediscovering a Chess Grandmaster's Legacy, samahan ninyo kaming balikan ang buhay at tagumpay ng isa sa haligi ng chess sa Pilipinas.
Plano nyo bang sumubok ng bagong hobby o mag-explore ng kakaibang sport? Merong indoor skate park dito sa South na pwede mong puntahan.
PTV Sports, ngayong Sabado, alas 4:30 ng hapon. dito lang sa PTV.
Alright, so as the country embraces the digital economy, no, talagang lumilipat na tayo dyan eh. Anong ginagawa ng TESDA para masuportahan muli ang upskilling and reskilling ng Filipino workers when it comes to digital?
So actually, we have what's called a Tulong Trabaho scholarship program that is designed specifically for upskilling and reskilling of our workforce. And obviously, the transition to the digital economy is a major consideration. So one of the things that TESDA has been doing has been tying up as closely as we possibly can with industry and industry experts, right? Designing courses, training regulations, and so on with various partners, right? So, and these range from IBM to Google, Amazon, right? Through IT BPO, so IBPAP as the umbrella organization, has in fact a roadmap for digital upskilling and reskilling of the country. So we're trying to intensify our partnership so that we can target whatever scholarship funds we actually have, and even beyond that, design programs which need not be scholarship programs after all, to ensure that our population are upskilled, not only transition to a digital economy, but are upskilled even within the digital economy. Along the way, we are hoping to be able to create new jobs, or to increase the Filipinos able to be absorbed or made eligible to the new jobs that might in fact still be coming and are not yet here. Right? So it really is through our industry partners that we need to ensure that our training regulations and our qualifications and certifications are aligned with the changes that industry needs, and that our own internal processes are flexible enough kasi ang bilis yung magbago.
Yeah.
At kung minsan, hindi pa natin alam kung anong klaseng trabaho ang lilitaw in a year and a half to 2 years time. May bagong trabaho na naman na baka hindi na paghandaan. So these kinds of flexibility and planning is also part of what TESDA needs to do as it allocates its Tulong Trabaho scholarship program funds.
So talagang TESDA has to be updated always sa mga bagong innovations, kasi pag naiwan kayo, maiwan talaga tayo.
Yes, ma'am.
Walang mangyayari sa atin. And we're talking about information technology, we're talking about artificial intelligence, and even in renewable energy.
Yes, ma'am.
How is it working
this is naman a mandate from our partner DOLE to do what's called the dual transition. So the dual transition has to do with the digital economy and the transition to a digital economy, but also a transition to a blue-green economy. So greening Tibet, ma'am, is an important sort of directive that we also have. So we are exploring, and we have started, in fact, creating certificate programs for electric vehicles, for example, for maintenance of hybrid EVs and so on. That's going to be rolled out, I believe, in the next month or so. And more of that type are going to come. We already have installation and maintenance of solar panels, for example, as part of TESDA's certifications. So dadami po at dadami yan. Tapos habang dumadami po yan, dadami rin po ang mga higher level niyan. Kasi we need to we need to also be aligned eventually to creating diploma programs all the way up to engineering schools po ng CHED.
Yes. And our, let's say, mechanics, they should be updated with these electric vehicles
Yep.
and even these self-driving vehicles, na wala ng driver. So, kung hindi natin alam yan, hindi natin sila mapapadala abroad or even here, develop our own industries here.
Yes, ma'am. So, meron ho tayong Electric Vehicles Industry Development Act na bahagi rin ho tayo noon nasa Congress pa tayo. And part of that is to develop the industry locally, no? So, as I had said earlier, kaya ho kailangan close ho talaga ang relationship ng DTI at ng TESDA so that while these emerging industries are coming to the Philippines, we can make sure that manpower and workforce is not a limiting factor to its expansion.
Yes, okay. Gusto ko lang balikan ang isang accusation din doon. Not your time, definitely many administrations ago, nagka-problema sa mga ghost trainings kung saan sinasabing may mga nag-train pero hindi naman talaga sila na-train but vouchers were issued to maybe schools or institutions. Ano na po ang nagawa ng TESDA to address that and how can we avoid that in the future?
So, again, this is my predecessors, right,
yes.
who have put in processes and procedures to, at the very least, monitor and minimize if any of that is happening. So, one is we've put together a system for quality assurance of our TVIs, our institution partners, but then also our assessment centers and our institutions, many of which now have CCTVs linked, in fact, to command center. So TESDA can in fact observe whether or not the training is happening and the assessment is happening.
And that there are real students
And that there are real people there, right? We have also started biometric entry into the training, so we can tell whether you are there or not there. And now we are shifting to be able to use the biometric system with the PhilSys system of the national ID.
Ayun. So everything's linked na. You cannot fake your identity
Mahirap na ho.
or fake your presence.
Mahirap na ho ngayon.
Okay, ano naman ang ginagawa kaya ng TESDA, Secretary Kiko, pagdating sa mga programa na, kanina nabanggit nyo rin to, pero I want you to talk more about this, yung pag-abot natin at pagiging accessible ng mga TESDA programs para po sa mga nasa liblib na lugar, yung po mga underserviced areas in the Philippines. Ano po divide when it comes to technical education?
So, as I said before, one of the ways that we're doing that is through TESDA, which is really online. But for the far-flung areas that don't have access to the internet or don't have access to electricity even for certain places, meron hong mobile training for livelihood programs ang ating mga provincial centers ng TESDA, where they can in fact bring the TESDA training up to the sitios that are far-flung and difficult to reach.
And how is the engagement in the rural areas?
Kulang pa. Kulang pa, ma'am. Part of it is because of the opportunities that they see. So the value of the training is hard to quantify, right? Kung wala akong trabaho kasi,
hindi sila na-eengganyo.
So the take-up is relatively less, except for things like training for farm schools, right? Or for farmers.
Yes.
In the rural area, there is also the program, particularly for rice farmers and coconut farmers. Meron po tayong mga training na ginawa kasama rin naman po ang ating Department of Agriculture, no, to ensure that they get properly capacitated. But for them, generally they come to the farm schools, right, rather than TESDA going out to them, because the Department of Agriculture creates the registry, no, and or the local government creates the registry of the farmers, at sila po ang nagiging eligible beneficiaries ng program.
Ayun. Okay, so from far-flung, ngayon, pwede tayong lumapit, no? Yung mga marginalized sectors naman, yung mga out-of-school youths, yung mga persons with disabilities, yung pong mga indigenous peoples, paano naman na ilalapit ang programa ng TESDA sa kanila?
Sa totoo lang, kulang pa. Right? Because the scholarship programs are actually quite wide. All of them can really avail. But targeting it specifically to the marginalized sectors is another component of TESDA's programming and communications plan that needs to be strengthened. Particularly for indigenous peoples and so on. So, depende rin po kasi sa depende rin sa sektor. Nandyan na rin ho ang senior citizens, nandyan na rin ang mga gustong magbagong trabaho pero nakapag-career na sila, bagong career. TESDA is actually quite open to all of them. But I must confess, kulang pa po ang aming support system to make sure that we reach out to them. So we are in the middle of arranging a relationship with the new chair, ma'am, of the National Youth Commission,
Yes.
to ensure that we reach the out-of-school youth or the unemployed
Yan.
in the youth sector that comprises almost 60% of our unemployed,
Oh, yeah.
according to DOLE data.
So, base po sa inyong pag-aaral, Secretary Kiko, kapag TESDA graduate ba, ibig sabihin yan madali na rin siyang makakuha ng trabaho. Maybe this is also the message we need to send out to the out-of-school youths para they will see, there is something that you need to look at pagdating sa TESDA.
Absolutely. As I said, the skills that we provide and the certification that we have given in the past, 80%, right, get gainfully employed or become entrepreneurs after. So, marami ho diyang pwedeng matulungan na marginalized sectors. So, I talked about the out-of-school youth who comprise the biggest demographic bulk of our unemployed. But we also have people deprived of liberty. We also have a TESDA program that goes out to people deprived of liberty.
Mga PDLs,
Mga
really?
PDLs, ma'am. So that we can try to ensure that they have livelihood options and do not become recidivists, right? To go back into
Yes. Committing crimes.
crimes after.
Yes.
So we have programs again for women. We have programs, right? So there's a whole slew of them. We can strengthen it in terms of our communication campaigns, sa TESDA. Kasi dapat nga, gaya ng nasabi ng dating mga Director General ng TESDA, dapat abot lahat sa TESDA.
Okay. At may mga ilang bagay pa po tayong nais pag-usapan. Ating aalamin ang mga kasagutan sa mga bagay na yan sa pagbabalik ng In Person.
PTV Consumer Watch, bantay presyo sa gasolina.
At nasa huling bahagi na po tayo ng ating programang In Person ngayong gabi. Kapiling pa rin natin ang ating panauhin, ang TESDA Director General, si Secretary Kiko Benitez. Okay, so Secretary, off the air, you were talking about other projects pa and programs that TESDA is doing. Pero in the next 5 years or in the not so distant future, ano pa po yung mga priorities na nais niyong pagtuunan ng pansin?
Actually, there's a lot of internal structural things that we need to tighten. So, kagaya na sinabi ko, yung unang-una syempre na hiniling ng Pangulo is to ensure na employment ready at employable and employed actually ang mga graduates na lumalabas sa TESDA. So, training to trabaho ay isang pinakamalaking mandato. So, ang mga priority areas in order to do so, kagaya na sinabi ko, is yung mga iba't ibang klaseng partnerships ho namin sa iba't ibang ahensya ng gobyerno. Kailangan hong maging mas malinaw, kailangan hong maging mas targeted, at ang information sharing po. No, lahat ho kasi kami, halimbawa ang DOLE ay meron ding panibagong platform na digital na ilalabas para sa labor market intelligence. No? Kasama rin po ang TESDA dyan. No? So, isa ho yun ang aming improving our own transition to the digital economy, no? To increase efficiency with our partners, whether it is DOLE or DTI, gaya na sinabi ko, or the National Youth Commission, or the senior citizens, or the women, right? Lahat ho yan kailangan naming ayusin. Ang ikalawa ho, siguro na malaking bagay din, which is very structural, no? Is our current engagement with the Philippine Qualifications Framework. Ito naman po ang rationalizing ng qualifications at standards nang galing po sa DepEd, TESDA at sa CHED. No? Pag magawa ho natin yan ng maayos at gumagalaw naman talaga ngayon, no? At matapos natin yan, ang atin pong qualifications ay magbubukas po ng iba't ibang pathways na pwede kang mag-TESDA, pwede kang bumalik ng CHED, pwede kang lumabas ng CHED at mag-TESDA at maghanap ng trabaho, no, so that you have a truly lifelong learning frame. No? At para ho yung kakayahan ng bawat Pilipino ay ating maaruga, no, at mabigyan ng capacity para kung ano man ang panaginip, ano man ang pangarap, no, ng bawat Pilipino ay meron siyang pwedeng daanan. At makakatulong po ang TESDA, particularly in the informal and the non-formal space, because after all, CHED and DepEd are in primarily formal education. So, dun sa dalawa, yung aming information system sharing with the various agencies to make sure that our intelligence for planning purposes of allocation and targeting of our resources, of our scholarships, is more effective for higher economic impact and gains for the country. And the second one is to ensure that the qualifications are tied at threaded, whether it be from DepEd, TESDA, or CHED. Kung magawa ho namin yung dalawang bagay na yan at hindi ho malinaw na in the next 5 years matatapos, no? Malaking bagay na rin po yun, no, para sa amin. Because we have to do that while keeping in mind our very specific sectoral, no, needs to address the needs of construction, the needs of the digital economy, the needs of renewable energy, the needs of the blue and green economy, no, the needs of the creative industries. Isa pa kong mandato na hiningi rin pala, no, para po palawakin, no, ang mga kakayahan ng bawat Pilipino. As you know, the DTI is in the middle of proposing and forming the program program for both Malikhain Pinoy and Tatak Pinoy as an industrialization process. For the first time, I think this year, after a long time, ang rate of growth po ng ating manufacturing or industrial sector ay umangat, has been growing a little bit faster than our service sector. So that is an indication of the consequence of some of these efforts that the government has been putting into industrialization of a specific type.
It's nice to see where the improvements
Meron naman, ma'am.
Yeah,
Meron
maganda yan.
naman.
Okay, madami tayong partnerships, nabanggit niyo nga po, with other agencies. Pagdating naman sa private partnerships, ano-ano ito at paano natin sinusulong pa to?
So sa ngayon, as I said before, TESDA is quite dependent upon industry partners and industry boards. Industry partners in terms of individual corporations, but also industry boards in terms of associations of industry sectors. Kasi kailangan namin siguraduhin ng mga qualifications at certification na ginagawa namin ay unang-una talagang makakatulong kung naghahanap kayo ng trabaho. So it has to be industry relevant, and we want it to be as industry driven as possible. So kailangan namin ng partnership. So lahat sana na mga industriya diyan, lahat ng mga sektor, lahat ng mga korporasyon na nangangailangan ng manpower development, TESDA is open, and welcome to come to TESDA, and we will try to devise training programs and certifications and qualifications that address your needs so that the expansion of your sector is not limited by the lack of manpower, skilled and globally competitive Filipino labor.
Okay, sabi ng ilang grupo, skills, not diplomas, should be the basis for hiring. Ano kaya ang reaction ninyo dyan, Secretary?
Tamang-tama ho yun. I would agree. In a way, it's really part and parcel of a global shift in the world of work, right? Increasingly, because the skills required for any specific job or position is changing very quickly, industry needs to know that you can do specific skills bundled up into the position. And the diplomas, by which I mean CHED bachelors, for example, is not necessarily an assurance that you have the specific skill set that industry requires.
Right.
Now, kakausap ko lang kay Chairman Popoy de Vera, and he seems very cognizant of this change. So CHED is also going to start trying to reconfigure the way they do curriculum planning and assessment for higher education to make sure that it is more industry responsive. And the way that they will do that, I believe, is to further specify the skills that come out of a specific program. Right? So TESDA, of course, has always been skills based. So for example, ang employability po natin ng ating mga senior high school graduates, karamihan naman ng mga pangangailangan ng industriya ay hindi naman kailangan ng bachelor's degree. Pwede naman ang senior high school magtrabaho, senior high school graduate magtrabaho. Pero kailangan din siguro na they specify what the skills are that they need. So industry themselves, HR managers, for example, needs to shift their mentality into a skills-based approach para malaman nila kung ano talagang klaseng ang skill set na hinahanap nila, kung ano man ang trabaho na naghahanap sila ng tao.
Ayun. Pero let me just say this, kayo mismo ay maraming diploma. Marami pong diploma. Meron kayong Master of Arts, Master, MA. Meron kayong PhD sa Comparative Literature dito pa sa University of Wisconsin, Madison. Ayan. Meron pa kayong, of course, Bachelor of Arts in Comparative Literature. Summa cum laude lang naman. Summa cum laude. At kayo din po ay meron ding cum laude the degree sa comparative literature.
English.
In English sa Cornell
Yes, ma'am.
University. So that's a lot of diplomas, right? But how are these diplomas helping you now? Kasi naging professor din kayo, tapos naging kongresista din kayo, tapos ngayon nandito kayo sa TESDA. How are all these things coming together for you?
So, asking about me personally,
Yes.
I've always been an educator my entire life. So education has actually been my profession and my training, and perhaps my vocation as well. So nakakatulong obviously sa akin dito sa TESDA, because TESDA is at the end of the day an education agency.
Yes.
Na-inherit ho namin ang apprenticeship program ng DOLE, pero na-inherit din ho namin ng mga trade school ng DEX. Noong unang panahon, nung may DEX pa. So as an education agency, obviously my experience and my professional training in the sector in education has been quite helpful. But I think it's a little strange for me to say because I'm from the humanities.
Yes.
And of all the diplomas, if you like, of all the disciplines and degrees, ang humanities siguro ang pinakamahirap gawing skills-based.
Medyo.
Diba? So, but that doesn't preclude thinking through what that might mean. So, naghahanap po tayo ng patterns, no? Naghahanap po tayo ng iba't ibang form kung saan ang halimbawa ang micro-credentials, ang learning outcomes ng TESDA ay pwede nating buhagin sa training regulations, tapos ipagsama-sama sa iba't ibang klase, para handa ka sa ibang klaseng trabaho naman na hindi mo maisip noong unang panahon na yun ang gagawin mo. Right? So the openness, I think, of thinking about lifelong learning as a journey is something that in many ways my field specifically has prepared me for.
But it's a good attitude to take, diba?
Absolutely. Kasi ang kailangan natin talaga ngayon, sa totoo lang, even having said skills-based approach is what we need, we have to remember that the world of work, because of technology, will continue to shift and change. So what we really need are people able and willing to constantly learn and relearn. And that is in many ways a growth mindset that can be and should be developed.
Okay, and with that, we'd like to say thank you so much, Secretary Kiko. You have imparted so much knowledge, and well, hopefully we will be more skilled in the things that we do para po sa mas magandang kinabukasan. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming
sa oras
salamat
na
po.
binigay niyo sa amin. Dekalidad na pagsasanay sa bokasyonal na edukasyon ang makapag-ambag ng talento sa larangan ng teknikal na kasanayan para maiangat ang kaalaman at kakayahan ng bawat Pilipino. Yan ang layunin ng mga programa sa ilalim ng pamumuno ni Director General Jose Francisco Kiko Bantug Benitez. Ang mapatunayan ang galing ng mga manggagawang Pinoy worldwide. At yan ang tunay na mukha sa likod ng mga balita at mga isyong pinag-uusapan. Matapang na humarap at nagpakilala. Ako po si Angelique Lazo at ito ang In Person.